Have you ever had a really good friend? Let's talk about that. Good morning, Crossroads students. I hope you guys are all doing really well and having fun doing online school. When I was younger, I was probably around 15, 14, somewhere in there. Probably around some of your ages. I was going to church and I met this guy named Joel. And this guy, Joel, and I, we weren't really close. In fact, I thought he was kind of weird. He thought I was kind of weird. But over time, we began doing stuff together at church, and we actually became friends. And in our friendship, we just hung out and would do stuff, talk, and that kind of thing, as friendships form. And then eventually we started working together outside of church. And then before I knew it, this guy that I originally thought was kind of weird, and I didn't really know, and I didn't know if I liked him, eventually this guy and I became best friends. And we are still friends to this day. And it's kind of crazy because in our lives, sometimes we don't see friendships coming. We don't see a friendship. We don't predict a friendship or what it's going to be, but it just happens. In the Bible, there were two guys by the name of David and Jonathan. And Jonathan's dad was king, which would make him prince, right? In our minds, that's the way it kind of works. And so Jonathan's dad was the king over all of Israel. And God had told Saul to do something, and he disobeyed. And so God was like, listen, Saul, that's the last straw. It rhymed. And he's like, you're not going to be king any longer, and none of your kids are going to be king. I'm going to change families, put someone else in. And so God chose this guy named David, and he anointed David to be king while Saul was still king. And so David, he was a good guy, and you probably know him by David and Goliath, that whole story. And so one day David was in his fields, and he was just doing his thing, and his dad told him to bring food to his brothers who were fighting the Philistines. And so David went, he brought food, he saw the big giant, and he said, why haven't we killed this guy yet? And they're like, because no one's going to go out there and fight that guy. He's huge. And so he's like, I'll fight him. And so they brought him before King Saul. And so now you have King Saul and David meeting. The current king, and then the boy who God said was going to be king. And King Saul probably didn't know that was true, but David did. And so David, as you know, killed Goliath, and then eventually began leading Saul's armies. And the crowds were saying, Saul has killed his thousands, but David has killed his tens of thousands. And David began leading Saul's army, and Saul became really jealous because he was a better fighter, better warrior, better leader of his people. And Saul kind of, instead of being happy that David was fighting for him, he actually became jealous of David. But David and Jonathan became good friends. Remember, Jonathan is Saul's son, the king's son, the one David's supposed to replace. And David and Jonathan became really good friends. And one day, King Saul, actually this happened on two occasions, King Saul was so angry at David that he threw a spear at him, trying to kill him. And he missed. You'd think after the first try, David would have seen it coming, but he tried it again, and he missed again, and David left. And then he's like, Jonathan, listen, your dad's pretty upset. He's not happy with me, and so tonight at the feast, I'm not going to go. I need you to feel it out, see if he's still mad or see if he's kind of chilled out. So Jonathan went, and Saul was like, hey, where's David? And Jonathan, Saul's son, was like, oh, he went away to do some worshiping and sacrificing, so he's not here. And Saul became so angry that David wasn't there that he threw a spear at his own son. And that's when David and Jonathan knew that it was no longer safe for David to be there. And so they devised this plan, and Jonathan gave him a message, and he sent him away, and David fled. And what's crazy about this is the Bible says that they were such good friends that they were of one spirit. The Bible says that they loved each other like they loved themselves, which is awesome. And maybe you have a friend like that. Maybe you have a friend like that in your life, but that was the exact friend that David needed. And before David left, Jonathan said, hey, listen, David, I know you are going to go on and do great things. God's going to be with you. I just ask this one thing, that you will be kind to my family when you're in power, when you're taking over. Be kind to my family. David swore it, and he said he would. And later on, he did. When Jonathan's son fled and left, David found him years later and gave him a house and people around him to help him, and he gave him money, and he took care of him, all because David and Jonathan were such good friends. So here's my encouragement to you. Sometimes in life, we don't have the family we want, or maybe the family that we need, and that can be tough. That can be really, really difficult. But family is not always something that you're born into. Family is something that you can create. And David and Jonathan were such good friends that it ended up saving David's life and helping Jonathan's son years down the road. And so my encouragement to you is that you would just be a friend to people that are unlikely, people that maybe you think you shouldn't be friends with. And be a friend to them and create your own family. Invite them in. Maybe someone else, maybe you have a good family, but someone else doesn't. My encouragement to you is invite them in and make them a part of your family, because family is not always something we're born into, but it's something that we can create. And so that's my encouragement to you. If you want to talk more about that, I'd love to talk with you about that. Come back next week, because I want to talk about how we can encourage friends and be there for each other. With that being said, I'll leave you guys. Have a good rest of your day, and we'll see you soon.